Hello everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the video game Armory. Today we're taking a look at the latest gun added to GTA Online in terms of pistols, the WM-29. In this video, our recurring theme will be the ceramic pistol and the HK-P7, since the WM-29 and the ceramic pistol are based both on the P7, and the ceramic pistol itself is not very different from the WM-29. With this out of the way, we gotta start off by one thing that might have went overlooked by some, is that both the ceramic pistol and the WM-29 are a die-hard reference. The WM-29 being a die-hard 1 reference, and the ceramic pistol being a die-hard 2 reference. Both of these guns have also some components that come from Glock, and according to the GTA wiki, the front rail of the gun supposedly comes from a FN57. Let's start off from the frame. The frame is a vital part of the gun that holds the trigger and the recently added to the gun squeeze cocker. The frame has also got some components that have not been changed, such as the rail that is identical to the one of the ceramic pistol. Some things that have changed are, however, the trigger guard, the material that the frame is made out of. If you notice in this one, at least, it could be that just the paint has changed, but if the ceramic pistol is true to its name, then the entirety of the ceramic pistol, made exception for pressure bearing parts, are made out of ceramic. So in theory the frame has got metallic material, presumably, or maybe it's polymer, although judging by the reflection I would say it's some sort of steel or metal anyways. Going on, we can talk about the trigger, and the trigger is more slim. It has got a more delicate figure, and presumably it weighs less. Next up, we can talk about the trigger guard, which is also another part that has changed quite a bit. Now, while at first sight it might seem extremely slim, as if they have milled out a lot of bulk from the gun, not much has been done in terms of slimming it out. They literally just changed that squared off part, which for some reason the ceramic pistol had a pin, but that'll be of course seen in major detail in the ceramic episode. So other than that, I can notice that the part where the trigger guard attaches back to the frame, so the part behind the trigger, is slightly bulkier, probably to accommodate, or rather to give better ergonomics for the fact that now there's a squeeze cocker. Another interesting thing, we have got to talk about the odd button that is above the trigger guard, right below the slide, the one that is slotted inside the grip. Whatever that button does is honestly interesting, because according to what we see, it's supposed to slide forward for something. Now, it is hard to speculate what it is, but I suppose it is not a safety, because the squeeze cocker itself acts as a safety if this is anything like the P7. Thus, we're left with the possibility of this being a slide release or a takedown button, which could be possible. Maybe that disengages the slide from the frame and allows you to deassemble the gun so you can maintain it, clean it, and do whatever you supposedly need to do. That's pretty much all for that button. We can't really come up with anything solid since it's all speculation. I can say that I don't see any pin that retains the trigger from this view. Maybe it's under the grip, which is a possibility, but there's no way to confirm that. There is an interesting detail. Compared to a ceramic pistol, this one does not have a beaver tail. Or rather, the beaver tail has been cut off, making the design more slick and less possibly to snag onto something. But this means that if you have a wrong grip on the gun, it could happen that when you fire it and the slide goes back, it could bite the webbing in between your thumb and your index finger if you have too much of a high grip. Now, the grip has got screws in it, which is interesting because in the ceramic pistol there weren't screws to hold the grips onto the frame, which honestly is interesting how they kept it. Now onto the interesting part, which is the squeeze cocker. But actually before that, I have to say that some components have been removed from the ceramic pistol. So right above the trigger, there used to be two components that one could have been a slide hold open, and the other one could have been a takedown button or a possible safety. Now those two buttons, or rather those two components, are gone. They are nowhere to be seen in this gun. The frame is smoother, which seems to go in line with the whole design of the gun of being lighter than the equivalent of the ceramic pistol if it had metal. We do not know the ceramic pistol's weight. For all we know, it could be lighter and have more quote-unquote marks bulk to it because it's a different material with a different density. Moving on, like I promised, to the squeeze cocker, which is the real interesting part of this gun. We can say that the most interesting thing about this is the fact that this component, what it allows the gun to do is, first off, it acts as a safety. What this safety does is it disables the trigger, and also the firing pin is not cocked when using this. This is an effective safety because the real-life HKP7 is a single action only pistol, meaning that if you do not cock the firing pin, you're not effectively able to shoot it because the trigger itself is not designed to shoot the gun in double action. So, as established before, the gun is effectively in a safe state while the squeeze cocker is not pushed. So, in theory, you could also consider this to be a grip safety. But the reason why it's called a squeeze cocker is, first off, one of the things that you do when pulling this is that the firing pin gets pushed back. So now it is cocked and ready to fire in single action. The other thing it does is it also moves some other components so that they're in a position where should you pull the trigger, you actually can trip the sear and let the firing pin drop. Another thing we can talk about while speaking about the frame is the barrel. Now you might be asking yourself, why are you talking about the barrel if we're talking about the frame? Well, these two pieces are correlated. Now if you take a look at the firing and reloading animation, the barrel does not move one bit. This means that the barrel is retained to the frame rather than being maybe free floating or whatever else is used in other recoil systems. This piece of information will return useful when we will be speculating on the recoil prediction of the gun. Now let's move on to the slide. You can see on the slide that there are some returning features from the ceramic pistol. First one that jumps to the eye is the retaining pin of the striker assembly or the firing pin assembly. That is at the very back of the slide on both sides of the slide. Other than that, the shape is the same pretty much. The only difference is this slide is a bit more slim and it is a bit longer. Figuratively speaking and using a bit of our imagination, we could say that this slide is possibly interchangeable with the one of a ceramic pistol. Looking at some other features that are interesting and different, the ejection port has been swapped over to the other side. It's now a right-handed ejection port. The extractor is external now. Sights have changed, not drastically, but the mount of the sights did change at least. The engravings have changed, but we'll read those later. The serrations have changed. They have removed the old serrations that there were. This would remove some ease of use of the slide because you don't get as much grip as you used to before. And another interesting thing is the fact that there are some cutouts on the slide that go from the end of the barrel to the end of the extractor, which is an interesting design choice. I don't see much use in it personally, but it might have been done for the cool factor. And the metal finish accentuates more some other cutouts that have been made, for example on the top of this slide, but that's already present in the old ceramic pistol. It's just that it's not as easy to see if I'm not wrong. Okay, let's move to the back of the slide. Now, like we said before, there is a striker inside this gun. There is a firing pin. So here is where there's the backplate of the gun, the striker backplate. Behind this, there is the firing pin, and there's, of course, a part of the trigger mechanism, or rather, everything is behind that, pretty much. At least everything that has to be nearby the firing pin, spring, etc. Now, moving on to the front of the gun, we can notice that the barrel has got an interesting rifling pattern. It's different from the ceramic pistols, but this is not honestly a surprise since we're shooting a different type of ammo. And the spring guide rod has got a weird cutout on the front, which seems to be made for Phillips head screws, honestly. I don't know why, but it is there. When you retract the slide on this gun, the barrel, like we said, does not tilt up, does not go anywhere because it's fixed to the frame. And the presence of that guide rod makes us assume that this has got to use a different recoil system. So, what is so interesting about the fact that this has got a guide rod for the spring? Well, the normal HKP7 uses a different system where gas is propelled from the barrel to a secondary tube, to a secondary gas tube below the barrel that pushes against the slide. That creates resistance so that the gas in the chamber can drop well enough. And that is what keeps the barrel and the slide sealed for enough time so that it's safe to extract. Now, if that isn't the system in question, it is possible that the system might have been changed with something else. This something else being possibly maybe a roller delayed system, since we do know HK has used them and I don't see it improbable of it being here. That in my opinion would fit with the design of the gun, possibly. although we do not have access to the internals of the gun, and like it has been proven that such a system has been adopted with some other handguns like the HK P9S, and that's pretty much it. Moving on to the engravings and the different markings on the gun. So, if we take a look at the slide, we can notice first off that the gun's caliber is in 9x19. Second, we can notice that the gun is made in Liberty City, and we can notice next to the Liberty City a weird number, which is 768-513-35F. What this number stands for is so far unknown. Possibly something that is related to the factory building phase. Who knows? Then to the rear of the slide, we see some odd lettering, which this could be a serial number for all we know. ZNHMBT78. And that is pretty much it for slide engravings, but honestly I haven't seen much else on the gun body. Like on the frame there was nothing, on the grips there's nothing engraved. This leads me to think that this gun could have been a licensed copy of the ceramic pistol done with different materials. Something like this wouldn't surprise me because the guns are extremely similar. Of course they fire different calibers, but this could very well be a licensed copy of the ceramic and 9mm. And the last few interesting details that cannot be seen are the fact that this gun comes with a 12-round magazine and cannot be upgraded, and it can be fitted with a suppressor. Presumably, since on the external I don't see any threading, it could be internal, or I might be wrong. Because when you paint the gun, you can notice that the tip of the muzzle is differently colored, so that could be actually a part that can be screwed off to insert a suppressor. What kind of makes me doubt that that is it is the fact that it has got rifling up until the end. That would be weird for a thread cover. With that said, we can just finish off by describing the look of the suppressor, which is rather interesting. It is going for a circular look with the hand a bit squared off. I'd say that it's sort of having this weird effect of being a low polygon circle, pretty much. Other than that, I'd say that this is it for this gun. So we're gonna go to the shooting part. So we brought the weapon to the range and now we're gonna test how well it performs. The first test is towards weapon effectiveness in combat. We're gonna test at a short range and then at what is our estimated average distance of combat. The first test will be without armor, the second one will be with armor. To dispose of a non-armored threat at a short distance, you are required to use 10 rounds without missing one. To dispose of an armored threat at a short range, you'll need 12 rounds, meaning that the armor, and we're talking about a full armor bar, takes only 2 shots away. To dispose of a threat at our estimated average firefight distance, you require 21 rounds on a non-armored target. To dispose of a threat in the estimate average fighting distance, you need 27 rounds. In this test we're checking out how effective the range of the weapon is. The moment that the hits will stop colliding with my character, I will be using a flare to signal it, so we get a roughly estimated maximum distance. Next up is the grouping test and the accuracy test. So the accuracy test is focused on the iron sights, how true they are, or rather how accurate the iron sights are to the actual impact point, and the grouping is pretty self-explanatory. Okay, so now that we're moving on to the iron sight test, we have to explain the criteria that we have chosen to determine what is a bad iron sight The criteria we decided to use for the iron sights is windage mistakes are very bad. Therefore, if the shots are too much to the left, too much to the right, or to the left or to the right, that is a bad iron sight. If the shots are slightly up, slightly down, or a bit up and a bit down, it's not that bad and it's a windage mistake. Otherwise, if they're spot on, they're perfect. We can say that the iron sights have been ranged the wrong way. Or rather, they're not set for the range we're shooting at, and we cannot consider that to be a gross mistake. That's the parenthesis closed pretty much. That, and we can also say that if we believe that the character is holding the gun at a 6 o'clock hold, it would be wrong, but we can't really say because it's not up to us. It's up to Rockstar to determine these things. So, parenthesis closed. Let's get back to the testing. So, on the grouping testing now, we can see that when you fire without the iron sights and with the iron sights, the difference is minimal on the two samples. We have fired the gun not using sights and using sights. The results were the same. And that's a wrap up for the WM-29. We hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Have a great day.